I got to use really different parts of my brain during a very like developmental time. Like on the weekends, we were getting dropped off in a field and told, here are 30 different pieces of equipment. Choose your own adventure. You have to put it together to deliver on this mission. We'll see you in 48 hours. And then during the week, I was in school and writing and doing research and getting to read. And then at night, I was this like, very social butterfly bartender. It allowed me to shape a lot of different parts of my personality simultaneously that now I feel like, exactly like you said, in agency world, we are solving problems. And some of the best problem solvers do come from the military. We know how to work as a team, but we like really, really know how to think on our feet. So yeah, I mean, little me never would have said that this would have been the journey I would have taken.
Is that much of it? That's not much of a change for you, right?
My name is Kerry Kite. I used to load bombs in the Air Force, and now I'm a writer, a filmmaker, and an entrepreneur. Through using the post 9/11 GI Bill to go to college, working hourly jobs to pay the bills, and freelancing my way into a career, I've studied what it takes to successfully transition from service to civilian, and that study has become a conversation. On this podcast, I speak to other veterans, successful artists, and entrepreneurs about their transition, what they did well, where they failed, what they learned, and most importantly, how they applied their skills. Episode 123 features Maggie Malek, an Army Reserve veteran and the CEO of Crispin, a chronically online media and creative agency making brands the conversation. Welcome. This is Veteran Made. This episode is brought to you by Go Pills, a nootropic that gives your brain neurotransmitter support both acutely and over time. Those of us that served in the military, regardless of where we served and in what capacity we served, all came into contact with different chemicals, different percussions, and various elements of our environments that have affected our brain's ability to function. Think about your brain's performance and your mental health right now, yes, but think about your future too. We have so much more control over our long-term health than we realize. Visit gopills.com and use code VM15 at checkout for 15% off. That's VM15 for 15% off. Give your brain the neurotransmitter support it needs to perform well right now and over time. All right. Good afternoon from the great state of Ohio and from New York City. Maggie Malek, welcome to Veteran Made.
I'm actually in Los Angeles,
You're in
but
Los Angeles.
thank you.
Let's
Two
run it back.
different coasts.
Thanks.
Yeah. We have offices in LA, New York, and Los Angeles. So
I should have asked before we started. That is on me for not being fully prepared, but you know what? We'll roll with it, and that works.
You're perfect.
Welcome either way.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. So for our audience who might not know who you are, could you give us just a brief primer on who you are and where and when you served? And then we'll jump into some questions about Crispin.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Maggie Malek. Again, it's like such an honor to be on this podcast with you. I joined the military right after 9/11. Chemical operations specialist. I always tell people the military saved my life. I was in the Army Reserves for 8 years. So while I was in the reserves, I was getting my degree, I was bartending, I was wedding planning, I was writing. So like a lot of people in the military, I've lived a lot of lives. I started working at now Crispin 16 years ago. It was called MMI at the time. And now I'm the CEO.
I love it. Quite the journey and a lot of things to fill in. Why do you say that the military saved your life?
Well, not to get super emotional super fast, but my dad committed suicide in 1999, and it was really difficult for me and my family, and I was pretty lost. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to be a part of something bigger. And my uncle was in the military and my grandpa was in the military. So I came home one day and told my mom I signed a contract to join the Army today. And she said, that's probably a good thing. So I always tell people that the military is where I like found myself after like a challenging few years.
Why do you think she said that? And or did she elaborate at all? Or did you have a conversation about it? Or was it just leave it at that?
Oh, I was a handful after my dad passed away. So I think she was like, this is a great thing. Maybe some structure would be really good in your life. So And my mom's always been really, really supportive of like me chasing my dreams and doing really, really hard things. And so I think she was actually not as surprised as I thought she was going to be when I came home that day.
Yeah, it's funny how we get older and we look back and the things that we think were obvious or not obvious, the things that we didn't even realize were obvious at the time to those our parents and family and things like that are in fact obvious as we look back. I had a similar experience, not with the tragedy, but I needed structure, right? Like I knew that at 18 years old, in 2006 when I graduated from high school, I knew that had I gone to college right away and played football or did whatever I wanted to do, I at least had enough wisdom to know that first semester would be a lot of fun, but then I wouldn't have done well, right? Like I needed that structure. And similar, I had an uncle and a grandparent that had been in the military, but it wasn't like really on my radar. But it was one of those things that it was absolutely the best decision of my life, and then became a great foundation for a life that I still pull from today.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, I feel like that's similar to a lot of us, right? Like there's people that come from like legacy military families, and there's people who thought about it their entire lives, and there's people like you and I who just knew like, hey, we need something really different. And um they're the military can be very magical.
Yeah. So you mentioned doing a handful of different things. And obviously, we tend to focus on this podcast about the transition from military to civilian and the ongoing transition that we continue to experience as we work our way through our civilian careers and look back on the foundational skills and experiences that we got from the military. But one of the other threads I like to pull on are those little mini transitions, those little mini pivots, those skills and experiences that we were getting kind of along the way. So you mentioned some writing, you mentioned some service industry work, you mentioned a couple of those different. What was that journey like for you in the reserves as you were obviously you joined the reserves, so you weren't. Did you initially join the reserves? Is that right?
Yeah, so I initially joined the reserves, and it was interesting because our reserve unit. So it was right after 9/11. So I think that I was in basic training in 2001 or 2002, but it was chemical operations specialist. So basic training and IAT was together. So I think I was gone for 7 months for that school in Fort Leonard Wood. And then we were a Homeland Defense unit. So we were getting activated in the United States more regularly, but I was never deployed overseas.
So what was what did you see your path being when you joined the reserves? Like, did you join and go through the training and say, all right, this is going to be the stability that I have to kind of get me through college as I pursue a career that I envision, or am I going to do this and then figure it out?
So I actually thought, again, this is like funny how life works out. I thought I was going to join, and then I was going to stay in for a million years. I was going to get my degree in forensic psychology, and I wanted to go work in the army units in the Pentagon that were like even nerdier than chemical operations specialists. Um, but I also knew I didn't want to take on a lot of college debt. And so I was trying to figure out how to be in the reserves and go to University of Houston at the same time. And ended up in a communications program because I really, really love writing. And again, very, very different than how I envisioned college going, but I got very into it. Actually, I was at a community college first and then University of Houston. And at the community college, those classes I took on writing and journalism like completely changed what I thought I wanted to be doing. And I kind of realized I loved the reason I had been excited about forensic psychology and all that was like the research and digging into things. Well, journalism is like pretty similar to that. And so I spent like those 4 years working really hard not to take on college debt. So it was why I was bartending and going to college and being in the reserves at the same time. And about 4 years in, I just was working in the marketing industry. I really, really liked it. I felt like that like lost, awkward part of me was not as present anymore. And so I felt confident going out into the world rather than staying in the military. But no, I joined and I thought I'm going to be in and I'm going to do this for a really long time. I just got really into writing.
It's funny how it happens, right? Because similar path for myself, although I didn't do them at the same time, right? It was military and then college, tending bar, waiting tables in college, tending bar and waiting tables out of college while I was freelancing my way into the industry. And as I look back at it now, it's the confluence of all of those things coming together, right? Service industry, you're making cash, right? Like you're saying, like you're able to stay out of debt, you're able to make money, have a good time. It's social, right? It's both customer service and product, right? Like you're doing all of these different things at a restaurant, and then you're also learning, and then you're also out in the world, and then you also have this background of service, and in your instance you're serving at the same time. So it's like all of this comes together and illuminates a path that you otherwise maybe wouldn't have. I mean, if you would have told 13-year-old Carrie, who wanted to be an actor and wanted to make a living in entertainment and the arts, that he would sell out to the man and find marketing and advertising as an avenue forward, he would have been disgusted with you, right? Like he would have been like, no way, no, I'm not going to sell out, I'm not going to do that. But as you work, as you live, as you write, you start to understand that brand storytelling, product storytelling, content, right? Like this world that we live in, this is the way to touch as much of it as you want and as little of it as you want.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. And I think the thing that I find so similar about like how I work today and versus that time is like I feel like I got to use really different parts of my brain during a very like developmental time. Like on the weekends, we were getting dropped off in a field and told, here are 30 different pieces of equipment. Choose your own adventure. You have to put it together to deliver on this mission. We'll see you in 48 hours. And then during the week, I was in school, and I was, writing and doing research and getting to read. And then at night, I was this like, very social butterfly bartender who was like getting to talk to a ton of people. And so it allowed me to shape a lot of different parts of my personality simultaneously, that now I feel like, exactly like you said, in agency world, we are solving problems. And some of the best problem solvers do come from the military because we know what role we're supposed to play. We know how to work as a team. But we like really, really know how to think on our feet. So yeah, I mean, little me never would have said that this would have been the journey I would have taken.
Yeah, I mean, advertising in general, and I think the agency world in particular is remarkably similar to the military, right? Like a lot of people, I don't think realize that. It's one of the reasons why we make such great hires in the agency world. The Everybody has their individual mission set that ladders up to the larger mission set, right? So if you think about it at the campaign level, right, you've got, well, first of all, you've got to pitch, you've got to sell, you've got to pitch, you've got to deliver. That brings all of the teams together. You got client services working with strategy, working with creative, and then little old production is like, well, just be careful how much this might cost if we win, right? But then you win, and then your client services team is working with strategy, then working with creative, and then getting to production. And production is looking back and ensuring that everything that's been promised along the way makes it into the final set of deliverables. For me, it was the flight line, right? I loaded bombs on F-15s, this guy right here. And so like when I looked at it, I was like, oh, great. On the production side of things, client services are the crew chief, strategy are the avionics troops, and, creative is the engines troops, and production is the weapons troops. And we make sure that the bird gets in the air with all the munitions, and then it comes back empty, and then we do it again. Right. And so that's one thing that I always try to talk about when I talk to other industry people who don't have the military experiences. The frameworks and the kind of hierarchy that we've worked within, that we've been able to lead up and down a chain of command as well as laterally, fits right into the agency world, because at the end of the day, we're all trying to accomplish the same thing, but we each have our own individual responsibilities.
No, I love that. I totally agree. And I feel like the thing that there's a lot of articles and things that have been written about this industry and the egos, and is it dying or is it not dying or whatever. It's always changing.
Yep.
But the thing I feel like that has been really good for Crispin, and the way I lead, again, is from the military, is like you just said it. You can't do any of the things without the person who is cooking your food. or who is making sure that you have your canteen. Like you are a team. And so even if you think about like agency world, like our finance people are just as important as the creatives and the strategists. And if you don't have that like well-rounded group of humans who like also has like mutual, I would say trust, but also respect, like that is where things I think can go wrong at work.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to get to the kind of your three pillars of leadership that this will go live in December, so that you posted last month on Veterans Day. But before we get there, how did you find yourself in advertising? What kind of writing were you doing in college and while you were in the reserves? And then what got you into the advertising industry?
So I was working at a place called Barstool Magazine, not the Barstool Magazine. Back in the day, we passed out magazines, and it was like a zine. When you went into a
Yep.
bar, you got this little magazine,
Yep.
and it was called Barstool. And so I wrote for them. I would do interviews with bartenders, things like that. From there, I met a photographer, and he was working at a little tech startup. A lot of people don't know this, but in Houston, um, again back a few years ago. WordPress and a company called Shipple were both founded in Houston. So there's a lot of technology going on. So I worked at this little mini startup. And then Cindy Marion, who is the founder of MMI, she's amazing. She's been my creative mentor for 16 years. She was like, I don't know, Facebook groups, let's like try to do this thing. But I'd gotten adopted by the Mom 2.0 and blogger Mom Bloggers. I don't have children, but like I was volunteering at these conferences. I just like wanted to learn everything. Like my aperture of the world from the military was like 100% like wide open. So I was like picking Guy Kawasaki up at airports. Like just it was like the weirdest, coolest time. And I was spending time with these like women who were like telling their stories on the internet, and like they weren't afraid about it. So Cindy was like, I don't know, I guess you kind of understand how the internet works. Like, come here and like, let's see if we can start a social practice. And so I started on the PR team writing social posts for a mall. And then we started selling social media into bigger and bigger clients. And then, because I don't know the rules of this industry, then I would be like, well, look, Facebook just dropped ads. So then I would be like, hey, client, we should do media and creative together. And working at MMI, we were problem solvers for our clients. We really did everything. So I was on that team. Then at one point I ran the media team, but Cindy again was such a great mentor to me and taught me so many different spaces of the business. She sold the business to a company called Stagwell, which I love being a part of. And then I got promoted to be CEO just in time for a global pandemic, which leads to where I never ever thought I was going to be a CEO. I loved people. I loved the work. I loved the doing. And when Stagwell came to Houston and said, hey, we would like you to step up and take this role, my first reaction was like, Cindy, like that seems stressful all the time. I'm kind of good. But then I realized like who better to take on this role than somebody who like is obsessed with taking care of her people. So I said yes. And then 3 months later, the world shut down. And we grew and we took care of each other. And it was like a really pretty exciting, magical time. Um, but it was like scary too. And I think, again, that's when I was like, oh, everything I learned in the military, I did not know how much it would serve me like it did then. But
Yeah.
like being a wartime CEO is hard. And I found that I was like very good at it because of my like deep love for the team.
Yeah, I mean, it also sounds like you're well suited for it, both with your people centric approach, but also with your background of looking at the needs of the market and looking at the opportunities and saying, why don't we blend these disciplines together and figure out a way to solve problems for the other people, right? You're taking care of other people too, right? You're taking care of your client. When you
Yeah.
were talking earlier about, is the industry dying? Is these big agencies going away? Is it small agencies? Like, what's going on, right? Like my favorite thing about being on the production side is that we can look at developing media and creative simultaneously, because if we're delivering against a media plan, well, you can't do a media plan by itself and then force that onto creative. I mean, you can, people have done that for a long time, but it doesn't always work out that well. And back when I was at Circus Maximus, one of the things that we did extremely well was blend those disciplines together so that we know that what we're eventually going to produce against is both brand strategy and content strategy that works within the creative frameworks that we've established, and then produce and deliver that campaign, right? Or those campaigns. So as you look back on your journey and look at the discipline that you come from, a little bit more creative, but then also with an eye for media and strategy, and your love for people outside of the military, I'm going to challenge you a little bit, outside of the military, just within the industry, how did those integrate for you? Was there any conflict, like as you were looking at this new CEO role and this opportunity, like what was it that scared you the most about it, or what was it that excited you the most about it?
I think the thing that I'll fast forward a little bit about when MMI and Crispin were coming together, and then when I became the CEO of Crispin. This agency is a very important agency to this industry. Like, I learned about this agency in college, and the thing that I had imposter syndrome about at first was like, oh boy, like we are we can as an industry like fall in love with our own legends, and that's not just Crispin, that's any agency that like gets its time in the sun. And where I had, I think, a bit of imposter syndrome was like, gosh, like I'm just this woman from Texas who like wants to do things differently and like really believes in people, and like I'm being told like this is the way that you have to do creative and this is how you have to treat creatives, and like that's never been my experience. Like my experience is we're all people, and everyone to do great work has to have an ego tied to that work, whether or not you are a strategist or a media planner or a creative. I mean, my VP of finance is brilliant, and he, I think, is one of the biggest egos in the company. And I think that's a good thing, And so I think I got over that imposter syndrome pretty quickly of everyone telling me like how I needed to CEO Crispin, when I reminded myself, like, the best leaders and the best CEOs, like if they follow who they are and treat people with respect, which I always do, the best leaders don't believe their own legends and like some rule somebody else said because something worked 10 years ago. Like but that was really hard at first. It was really hard to embody what it was to be the CEO of Crispin. And I think I only got there by being like, okay, whatever. Like, yes, I'm the CEO of Crispin, like, but I am a group of 180 people who are excited about doing this thing and doing it together. And that is when I was able to like set the imposter syndrome down.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I've never worked there, but I've worked for a lot of people who have worked at the old CPB, right? So like that whole tree of legendary creatives and legendary producers and all this, like I know a handful of those people really well, and I've kind of worked downstream of that. So I've heard lots of stories anecdotally very similar to what you're describing, which is, well, this is the way we did it 10 years ago. And then it's the free thinkers who looked and said, well, that was 10 years ago and we had success doing it that way. How can we take what works now? Or how can we take what works from that and apply it now? And how can we dispense with what might not work now? And how can we find new ways to move forward together?
Well, and that's what I think is so cool about the legacy of Crispin is the people like who worked here were the free thinkers. Like that is what CPB and Crispin and Alex Bogusky and Chuck Porter have always embodied, is like a place to think freely, right? And I think when all of those folks left, then CPB became just another rule following advertising agency. And that wasn't what Crispin was. Like Crispin was founded by Sam Crispin, also a veteran. Chuck and Alex changed the game. And like, it's because they didn't follow rules. And so I think when I like, again, got out of my own head and what like all of these non-Crispin people were telling me to do, like, it's crazy. Like I get messages every day from former employees who are like, you're doing it. You're standing up for who Crispin used to be. And like, that is really special and neat. And that, I think, like you said, you know, a bunch of them. That is what is special about this place is like, I don't think Crispin ever believed any of the legends. Crispin was just always going to be Crispin.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so you posted last month on Veterans Day, kind of like your three pillars for how you lead. One was be worthy of your post. Two is see your people, and three is embody the mission. I'd love to unpack each of those and kind of talk through why they're in that order and what you believe about those and kind of how you execute against those. So when you say be worthy of your post within Crispin as the CEO, what does that mean?
So that means every day I get up in the morning and I think about how I'm running a small economy. Like I am responsible with a team, but I am responsible for 180 people and their families. And like that is a huge deal. I am not responsible for, you know, winning awards or glitter. Like, yeah, that's part of it, but like I need to be worthy of those 100 people and their families. And sorry, I'm gonna get emotional. Like it's just really important. And I think a lot of people when they get promoted and they think that time or tenure is worth more and the job is owed to them, like they lose that like magical spark of leadership. And like the minute you stop being worthy of your people, like I believe that's the minute like you're not worthy of your post anymore. So that's what I
It,
mean.
it's an interesting thing. I've said a lot in recent years that the hierarchy in the military and the idea of time and service in the military has nothing on that concept in advertising. It's been one of my struggles transitioning out of the military and into advertising is that idea of time and service and like what you deserve based on not just what's in your portfolio, but how long you've been working and how long you've developed that portfolio and how you're not quite ready yet for this position because you really just haven't done enough. Like regardless of awards and regardless of accolades and regardless of the success of any campaign, right? In advertising, we have this very strange notion that you need to do certain things for a certain set period of time and you have to climb that ladder the way that everybody else has climbed it before you. And if you don't put that time in service, well, then you actually can't have that position yet, which is really frustrating for the free thinkers and the operators out there in the world who say, well, no, I can do this thing. I can work with the team and I can get in there and I can execute on the leader's vision.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely well said.
Um, in terms of seeing your people, right? Like that, those two seem like very linked to me, right? Like if you don't see your people, well, then you're not going to execute on that first pillar that you were talking about. The people are the culture within an organization is what's going to drive the strategy of the organization forward, right? Like my dad used to always say that culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? It doesn't matter how good your strategy is if the people can't actually execute on it, well, then the strategy is useless because ideas don't mean anything unless you can execute on them.
I'll give Amy McMillan a shout out on our team. She always says, yeah, strategy without execution is just hallucination. Um, Seeing your people is big for me. I think, especially today, I think I was really lucky as a junior person in an agency where I had a CEO that really saw everybody for who they were. You know, we live in a world where everyone is very different and where we are, especially I think right now, um, we are trying to push and pull at a lot of different tensions. And I think as a leader, it is important to create safe spaces, to listen to people, to see people, but also to understand that like people in your group have different opinions. Um, Everyone needs to be, I think, supported and respect each other. Again, I think that goes back to that, some of the conversations we've had even today about like, who thinks they're the most important person in the room. But I think right now, like just reminding people and holding space for them and seeing them is key. Like when I'm in the office, like I really try, because we're hybrid. So in office days, like I work really hard to keep my schedule more open. So if somebody wants to like ask me a question about like a campaign I'm not even touching, or brainstorm, or like go for a walk and like feed the ducks, like we can do that, like I think if I'm just in a room all day long orchestrating like how Crispin wins awards, that might be really good for Crispin, but that's not going to be good for the next generation of people.
Yeah, that's another thing that I think a military background helps quite a bit with, is that we were all put into a very diverse group of people who come from a range of backgrounds and a range of experiences, and a
Mm-hmm.
range of families of origin and where you grew up and what you experienced, what you didn't experience. And you get into the military and there's a mission, right? There's a larger mission, but then there's your unit's mission, and then there's your team's mission within that. And we're all driven by, the values instilled in us, and then there are behaviors that are downstream of those values, and then there's outcomes that we're chasing, that those behaviors are driving, and those are going to be the results. In the military, it's the military results. In an organization like Crispin, it's going to be your business outcomes that you're chasing. And so people are not just individual people; they are individual people within a business unit, right, that has shared values and behaviors that are expected of them in order to drive the outcomes that you're chasing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we talk a lot here about like I want to run a sustainable business. And for me, that means a profit. And I'm unapologetic about this. I do not think that I've sold out to the man. I want to run a company that is sustainable, that makes money so that I can pour that back into people. And at Crispin, that idea of seeing your people, we have some of the best people programs in the industry. A lot of working parents age out of this industry, moms and dads, because it is difficult to childcare is difficult, right? We try to be pretty flexible. You can't say that you have people in all walks of life if the only people on your teams are in New York and LA. Our Houston office is actually the biggest. We have people in Denver and Minneapolis and Cincinnati as well. But I would say like Lauren Scott and the people team, like they've been able to do some pretty amazing things here in terms of people programs, just because like, again, the mission is doing amazing work so that we can make money, so that we can pour back into the people.
Yeah, it's one of the tough things about advertising, because we are, at the end of the day, trying to drive profit for our own production companies or our own agencies, and at the end of the day we're trying to drive profit for our clients as well. But we're also one of the most like engaged socially and culturally as a group of people, and it can be a tough thing to balance, right? To hold that, like, this is a business. We're trying to drive a profit here and make money in order to provide all of these things for the people that work here, and not just those kind of buzzword culture things, right?
Yeah.
But also like a real quality of life and a sense of meaning and purpose, that the work that we're doing is actually work worth doing.
Yeah. So the third one was that embody the mission. And so just like you talked about the military. So at Crispin, we talk about our mission being we're here to make the most talked about work in the world that people actually like. We call that work that works. Leading up to the vision of leaving the advertising world better than we found it. And that is at the top of every meeting that we have. I remind our employees of that. Then we talk about the principal stack, and the principal stack is people, process, profit. It's I always say, the next CEO of Crispin is working here today. So I'm going to teach you everything I know. But if all 179 of us win the lottery and go to Bali, and it's your first day at Crispin, and you think about the mission and the vision, and you use the principal stack to make a choice, when we all come back from vacation, no matter what choice you made, it will be right, and we will all support it. So I feel like embodying that and being like, and making choices based on that. And I have to explain it a lot. I have to say, like, guys, whoa, leaving the advertising world better than we found it does not mean that we are only doing award-winning work. Award-winning work is cool. However, a lot of award-winning work is just that. It is submitted to win awards. I want to do work that changes businesses, that brings more money into Crispin so that then I can change the people's lives who work here. I don't want to have 14 Porsches. I want to do cool stuff for my team members. That is really, I mean, it was just 4 years ago that I was still account director level. 5 years ago, I don't know math, but it wasn't that long ago that like I am so out of touch with what it means to be leading client relationships and also trying to run my life that like I just think that's really important. So yeah, we talk about those things at the top of every meeting, just like how in this industry we rebrief a client, we rebrief the agency. This is what we're trying to do here. This is the why. And again, it also helps everybody understand their place and their part and like how important they are in being able to do that.
Yeah, work that works is when you get into this business and you're doing it on a daily basis. My wife and I do this all the time, right? Like we were watching football or we were watching whatever, and a spot will come on and we'll stop and we'll look and I'll be like, man, that was a great spot. And she'll say, yeah, why do you think it was a great spot? And then we'll talk about whatever, cinematography, or we'll talk about direction, or we'll talk about the script, or we'll talk about, branding. We'll talk about like all the different nitty gritty technical, boring things that kind of go into it. But it's all of those things coming together, right? And work that works because it works. And it there is a science to it, but that's also why there's there's an art to it as well. How do you integrate the different business units within the agency to see what work works and then to make what work works?
So we are a connected agency. So we have media and we have creative, we have a VP of data and insight. So like when we put all of those pieces together, it causes I would say a really, really good creative tension between like, okay, creative team, have you come up with an idea that actually works in certain channels or not? And so for us, our approach and something that has been really important in the past year is we really start with channel planning first. Like that is part of the strategic brief. It's part of the business problem solving. And it's what the team, the creatives get from the jump so that no one is wasting their time spinning out ideas that don't necessarily make sense for the channel. My CCO is amazing, Steve Dinikas. He worked at Instrument. He's worked at Basic Adept. He has a digital background as well, designer. So there's a lot of integrated thinking that is going into it. We talk a lot about like, look, if this is a cool Super Bowl commercial, but it's going to die that day and then you can't do anything in email and SMS, like, did the idea actually work or is it just going to get you on a top 10 list? So, it's a lot of conversation. I think the work is never done. But again, it's what I believe Crispin has always been so good at is being channel agnostic, focused around even intellectual property for clients. Like, what is it that we're trying to do? And from there, the idea, the creative, all of that comes to life.
What do you think the value is for you? We talked earlier about the hierarchy within the industry, and you just mentioned that you're 4 or 5 years removed from account director level. What do you think the specific value is that you provide, being so closely removed from that level to now being at the top of the organization? What's the value in that time and service being so short, so to speak?
So one thing I will say that clients get if they work with Crispin is like a pretty invested leadership team. I still am in the work. We talk a lot about like what we need at Crispin is like dreamers and doers. And so I feel like the best part of it is that I am not 20 years removed. If I need to go to a client meeting and like get down and dirty, like I can do that. The team sometimes will be like, oh Lord, she's going to come in and like blow up some ideas. So it's not everybody's like favorite,
Sure.
but with love, but like, they also know that like, I will get in with them and the clients know that too. Again, same with my CCO. My COO is an executive sponsor on some clients. So it's, I would say important to all of us. Like, I feel like when you And my hope is that no matter how big Crispin gets, I'm able to stay close to the work. I feel strongly that like you as a leader lose your edge when you're not meeting with clients, when you're not really hearing from them, when you're just going to conferences and like kind of like, thought leadership. So I believe it makes us a lot better. It makes us pretty powerful in a room because we assign a client partner and they are this Amy, Emily, Stephanie, and Steve, these like badass, humans who are so smart. And like we all work really, really well together. So clients like how we all are. Clients like seeing that this group of people respects each other, likes each other. You can tell Jinley has worked on things before. But yeah, I think that time between it wasn't that long ago that I was in the work is a very good thing.
It's back to people, right? Like one of my biggest frustrations in the industry has been, so I've been blessed, right? I've only worked at small agencies on big clients, right? Not only big clients, but I've only worked at small agencies and I've been able to work on big clients. So what you're describing is my only experience. My only experience is working with everybody from the top of an agency all the way down. And I love it because it does remind me of the military. So it takes me back to my roots and I'm able to more easily translate those skills and experiences kind of directly onto my current set of skills and experiences and like work with people to do things. But it also reminds the people that are working for you that at the end of the day, you're working not for other people on the client side, you're working with clients. I get very frustrated
Yes.
when I hear as a producer, right? I hear, creatives will say, oh, the client's an idiot. They don't know what they're talking about. And it's like, no, that's actually not true. They know exactly what they're talking about from their vantage point. It's our job to go get in that room, whether it be Zoom these days or in an office in a conference room, and sit across from them at the table and say, all right, what's the note behind the note? What are the things that are frustrating you? What are the things you're not quite understanding about our concept? Is it too conceptual? Is it not practical enough? Is it, and especially when you're working in omni-channel, it's really difficult because, you can't just put TV on Instagram or TikTok anymore. You have to be producing, like you said earlier, for each channel. And so this idea of we're not working for people, we're working with people. And that's true here within our organization, as well as across the table with the other organization.
No, I think that's so important. And I have said before, my mom says this, like I don't like when people talk like call clients idiots. I also don't like when people say like, "Oh, the brief is boring." Like my mom used to say like, "Well, if you're boring or if you're bored, it's because you're boring."
Right.
And
Yeah.
like I just think about that a lot. I'm like, anything can be exciting. And again, like we all want to have at the end of the day, like we all want to have careers and jobs that fulfill us. And in this world, not everything is a Super Bowl spot.
Yep.
And like that's okay. And it has to be okay. Because if you think about how the world is changing, technology is changing, what CMOs are stressed about, like if you get up in the morning and the only thing you want to work on is a Super Bowl spot, well, you got what, 100 shots of that a year, and that's it. And like, that is not what I get up in the morning excited about. And I will tell people, like, there are clients that we are going to take on that are super nerdy and more media focused, that are super creative. They're all going to be different and they all have their roles to play in this organization. And again, that goes back to like, but at the end of the day, it is my job, the leadership team's job. Leaving the advertising world better than we found it means creating a sustainable business that's not shooting up and then going into a trough and all over the place. And, you do that by doing lots of different types of work.
Yeah, I think that's right. I was very lucky to produce a Super Bowl spot very early in my career. It's not even in my top 20 of favorite pieces of content that I've produced. I look back at it now. I'm like, man, I was really excited about that thing. And sure, it was a ton of fun and it was super cool to watch the game and to see it and to do all of that.
Yes, it is.
It is. And I'm not minimizing that at all, but I look back and it's like, I love doing what I do every single day for every campaign that I'm working on. My brother always says, it's, you need to love the what that you do, or you're not going to love what you do, right? You have to love the what. It can't just only be about the why, and it can't just only be about the accolades that you're chasing.
Yes. Yes. And I think that is something our industry, it's why I think we're on like a little bit of a transition here, I really feel like everyone got super focused on accolades. And then, during the pandemic, like brands really needed you to perform, like work had to work. And now, we're coming back to more of a middle ground where we have freedom and flexibility and like getting back to like, what is the root of the problem we're trying to solve? And do we solve that through brand and performance together?
Yeah, I think that's right. The old brand formance. Everybody says
Yes.
they came up with brand formance, but you Google it and you see 100 agencies said that. We've got about 8 minutes of scheduled time left. Do you have a hard out on the hour?
No, I think I can go over a few minutes.
Okay. Because I have an open-ended question that I end each episode with. But before I get to that, I want to talk a little bit about the rebrand that you just led the team through over the course of the last year. And what was that like? What were you looking to accomplish? What did you accomplish? And what are you moving towards?
Um, the last year. So we were obviously in a big transition, right? Like there's been a lot of news about that. What I wanted this year was to have some steadiness in people's lives. What I wanted was to win some big, amazing clients, and we've done that, right? We have won DSW. The news went out about that today. We are the Target Social AOR. We have long-standing relationships with Procter and Gamble, and so I feel that we have accomplished our goal of getting new clients to trust Crispin. We are hiring a ton, which has been really, really exciting. When I took over Crispin, we would put a job posting out and maybe get 5 or 6 applications. Now we get 70. I mentioned this, but like I get love letters and the kindest notes from former Crispin employees now, and we didn't get those before. So this year has been about really like making sure our infrastructure for doing great work that works is solid. Next year I want to find some more challenger brands who are excited about, doing things a little bit differently and who aren't afraid to talk about channel planning and media and creative all together, who are not going to get hung up on, well, I read this news story once that, Crispin is in the decline. Like it's not. We are crushing it. I mean, it's really, really amazing and special. So I just want to continue this momentum. Like I feel, again, because we're on the, Veteran Made podcast, like I feel a lot of, I will say, responsibility to Sam Crispin's legacy. He bought this agency when he came back from the war, and I think that's really cool. Again, I think it shows that veterans can do hard and weird and different things. And so I just want to continue that trajectory.
I love it. Yeah, momentum over motivation, right? It's easy to get motivated. It's not easy to stay motivated. The best way is to create and sustain momentum through the work that you're doing and through the relationships that you're building along the way. Maggie, to end each episode of the podcast, and you can answer this for the veteran community. You can answer this for the advertising community. I'll leave it up to you. I ask, what's on your heart and your mind for our community right now? Could be a piece of advice, something you want to get off your chest, or something you want to reiterate that we've talked about today. But Maggie, what's on your heart? What's on your mind?
I think this would be for really anybody. I think right now that idea of like seeing people is really more important than it's ever been. I think that idea of like holding space and listening and understanding that everybody right now is going through a very individual and unique journey is very, very important. I hope that we can continue to do that for each other. That the way I closed the Veterans Day post that you talked about is like, I think we've got to be a light for each other. Like I think that I know, it is really easy to get negative right now when you look at social media and everything going on. And I think we've got to be the light for each other. The Mr. Rogers quote, like find the helpers. there are so many more good people in this industry and in the world than we realize. And I just think we've got to find each other and hold on to each other and take care of each other.
Well said. I love it. Where can people find you? Where can people find your work? Where would you like to drive traffic?
You can go to crispin.com. You can follow me on Instagram. It's Mags Mac and Cheese because, I love
Great
cheese.
handle.
You can also find me on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, I'm often talking more about the work, but also some of the lessons I've learned in leadership and what it means to be a veteran there. Those are a few places.
I love it. Well, yeah, we'll share far and wide. We'll get with your team and work on PR and all that good stuff. And we'll tag on LinkedIn and Instagram and collaborate on posts and all of the things that we do to push this work out and share it far and wide together. But Maggie, appreciate your time. Appreciate your energy. Appreciate the work that you're doing. And I love seeing a veteran in a leadership position in an industry that definitely had a lot of veterans in it early after the war. But we're a small and growing bunch within the advertising industry. And I hope more veterans get into it. And I hope some apply for those jobs that you're talking about.
Yes. Thank you.
Awesome. We'll see you.
Okay. Bye.